Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome to the Adams Archive. My name is Austin Adams, and thank you so much for listening today. On today's episode, I'm just gonna keep it real with you guys. All right, I've been having some questions surrounding what we should do here with the upcoming new year. I've been looking at some of the metrics and stuff when it comes to the podcast. So I just wanted to have a brief discussion with you guys directly about where I see this going, some changes that I hope to make in the future for the podcast, and why I made those changes. I'll also include some talks about New Year's resolutions and some things like that. So I hope you enjoy. As always, hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and let's jump into it.
The Adams Archive.
All right. So I just wanted to have, like I said, just a brief discussion with you guys today. And the reason for that is because I've been doing some thinking. I've been looking at the growth of the podcast over the last year or so, and I have goals in everything that I do. Right? When I go into something, it's not just to do it, although I enjoy and love to do this for you guys. One of my goals for this is for this to become, at least in the future, a very real source of income for my family by participating in a passion of mine and sharing the messages and conversations that I'm interested in sharing with you guys. And a part of that journey, right, when I'm also have a business side of me. I always have. I've always been an entrepreneur. Immediately when I got out of the military, I guess even before that, when I was in the military, I actually had a clothing business that I started, and had a family member of mine that had started something similar, and they came down and helped me out. So at 18 years old, I actually ended up making more money from a side business that I had, selling clothing outside of a certain type of a business and inside of it. So I would basically go in, set up shop. It was a women's clothing line that I would order online from basically Chinese drop shipping companies. And I would set up these clothing stands within these types of businesses, and it was all cash, and I would split a percentage with the owner of the business. And so I actually made a good portion of cash directly from that during my time in the military, so much so that at one point it was making me more money than me being an air traffic controller in the Air Force. So it was pretty wild, but I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, right? I've always been engaged in some type of side hustle business. When I was in high school, it was network marketing. Like I've always had my hands dirty in business. And that's because I love creating stuff. I love the pursuit of taking an idea, because I always have a lot of them, and trying to see that come to fruition, and not only come to fruition, but also to see if other people like your idea. There's not too many mediums that you get to take something and get real-time feedback of whether your idea was a good idea or whether your idea sucked. And business is a great medium for that, because you'll always know. The market will always tell you whether or not your idea is good or not. And so that, segues me into the next thing here, which is that anytime you have a business, anytime you have an entity, anytime you have a business idea, there's an idea on, there's a couple books that you should read if you're in business and you're wanting to dive deeper into this, but one of them is the Lean Startup. And the idea with the Lean Startup is that you go into an idea and you have what's called a leap of faith, which is your original hypothesis that you then test through the market, right? Whether you do it through different email campaigns, whether you do it through paid advertising, whether you go talk to people with boots on the ground, see if people like what you're doing. And you'll get pretty good feedback almost immediately. And you shouldn't go into your business with this concrete sense of what it's going to be until you get consistent market feedback from running experiments. And so anytime you see stagnant anytime you don't have any growth in your business or any entity, maybe it's because you don't have what they would call product market fit, right? And what that means is essentially that the product that you have is something that people want, and they want it so much so that they would share it with their family and friends without you having to pay them for it. And that causes a virality effect. And through that, you find out what is the best product within the market that you're trying to fulfill. Now, when you start a business, you should start a business or a pursuit with a mission or a set of ethics or ethos that you're starting it with that you can then build the products around. Don't start a business with a product, start a business with a problem. And through the problem that you're trying to solve, you'll create multiple different opportunities to be able to fulfill the problem and give a solution to the problem that you're seeing. And when you don't see a specific outcome, that is called feedback, right? If you have a goal, let's say your goal is to sell 1,000 t-shirts in 6 months, and you reach 2 months and you've sold 3 t-shirts. You haven't exactly hit that product market fit. And so what I found when I started my podcast is that I had immediate growth. Now, some of that comes from an analysis called a pestle analysis. And through that analysis, you can identify some of the environmental factors, some of the political factors. And there was a lot of political and environmental factors at the time that when I started my podcast, there was a hunger, a thirst at the time for the conversations surrounding politics and conspiracies and the lockdowns. And I have a hunch here, I have a leap of faith that that's going to come back around in 2024 when it comes to the elections and some of the wars that we're seeing and things like that. But you also have to be engaged enough to continue the business pursuit around the mission. And so what I saw is immediate growth. The most views and listens that I had within my podcast was probably in the first 6 months. There was an immediate growth because there was immediate thirst and a hunger for the content that I was putting out. Now, I made several pivots throughout that early stage of that, one being that when the Ghislaine Maxwell trial came out and the Kyle Rittenhouse trial were happening almost side by side or back to back, I started to do political analysis outside of some of the historical recounts and revisionist history that I was doing and conspiracies and deep dives into cults and all of these cool things that I was super interested in at the time. Still am interested in those things. But I took a pivot into the politics arena, and I enjoy talking about politics. I'm very passionate about these things. A lot of the conversations that we're having I've said it before about trans stuff, and they become they're just tiring talking about similar things every single time. So what I've decided to do is to do what any good business owner or dreamer should do when they have a goal and they're not exactly in the trajectory that they want to see from that goal, is make changes and identify the changes and what their impact is. So that's what I want to do here, and that's called a pivot, right? So I've hit a point in the podcast where I've decided that the article after article after article is not exactly the format that excites me the most. And I don't think that's the case for you guys either, because that's the feedback that I've gotten through the podcast. And so I've seen a lack or not the trajectory of growth that I've wanted to see. And I think that's due to some of the content that I'm putting out. So I'm going to be making some changes over the next coming weeks and moving into 2024. And my idea is that I actually put out a survey. And that's one of the things you should do, whether you're a business owner or you have a dream and you have a goal, is hear from the people that you are looking to have the growth alongside, right? Whether that's customers, whether that's, whatever that is for you, you always want to hear, you want to get feedback from people. And so I put out a survey and I asked people through Instagram, what would be the most interesting topics to you, right? Is it politics? Is it revisionist history, right? When I did one of my early episodes, I did it on the reaccount of the Salem witch trials, which was super interesting to me, both psychologically, sociologically, seeing how that played out, how it was originally discussed, and how it actually played out, right? It ended up that the witchery that was going on was actually a tainted bread. Like, who would have thought, how crazy that it was really ergot poisoning, that these witches were causing them hallucinations and convulsions and all of this crazy stuff. But all that to say, that's revisionist history and some of the conspiracy stuff that we've talked a lot about. Those things are super interesting to me. and some other things that are interested to me is spirituality and theology and learning more about religion. And some other things that are interesting to me is using AI to talk to the people who I would love to have spoken to who are either dead or never existed. And some of the other things I'm interested in doing is talking to experts in their industry and people who are super passionate about what they do and some things like that. So I'm going to figure this out, guys, and I'm going to be experimenting this year and trying some new things. And I'd love feedback from you guys. If you ever have anything that you were like, hey, I fucking loved that episode, right? Whether it was the AI reincarnation of George Orwell that I interviewed, or JFK, or whether you loved my deep dive on the Salem witch trials, or whether you loved you just like the normal political articles that I go over with you guys. Whatever it is, I need that feedback from you guys. So I would love to hear from you. You can always reach out on Instagram, DM me. I look at every single DM that comes in. It's the Austin J. Adams. All right. But I need that feedback. And so what I'm going to be doing over the next coming weeks is I'm both going to be bringing in interviews. I'm going to be setting up new topics that we're going to be discussing surrounding some of those more things that I'm more interested in. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to still touch on politics and current events. And, some crazy stuff just happened with Jeffrey Epstein's files coming out. And I'm obviously still in that arena. I'm still a part of the political and libertarian movement and anti-woke army, I would say, trying to fight back against the virus that is extreme leftism. But it's not exactly what I think is the most interesting stuff that I could be going over with you guys on any given basis. And sometimes you just need a break from that stuff. And so I'm excited about some of the topics. Now, the very first topic, what I did is I actually took a whole list of like 7 categories. And from those 7 categories, I created 20 episodes per. And from those 20 episodes per, I created randomization within a calendar setting that I put in. And then I generated 5 potential authors or experts within those topics that I wanted to potentially interview around those things. And then I also did the same thing with the AI interviews. So I put in, again, topics and subjects I was interested in, and some of the things that I'm gonna interview Adolf Hitler on how to leverage propaganda and authoritarianism. I want to interview the Joker on anarchy versus capitalism. I want to interview so many interesting people and figures that you can start so many interesting thought experiments with that can lead us down some really interesting conversations. So that is what I'm excited about the future for with you guys. And so stick along with me. I'm going to be experimenting on these things. I'm going to be still engaging in some of the politics, but really I want to figure out what you guys want to see from me that aligns with what I'm extremely interested in. And so we just talked about a few of them, and I'm going to have those conversations with you guys, and I need your feedback. So let me know what you like. Let me know what you love. Leave a review. Put it in the review, right? Whatever you can do to reach out and give me that feedback would be great. And so this leads me down to the conversation, which is that this is a great way of framing your life, right? Is like when you hit a time where you're either not feeling the trajectory, where the trajectory of your life isn't on a path that is leading you to where you want to be. Whether it's your career, whether it's your friendships, whether it's your activities that you engage in on a daily basis, whatever it is that is, you need to take a step back and analyze it. And I love that for New Year's. There's so many fucking New Year's haters out there, which I, as a business owner, just don't get. It doesn't make sense to me, right? Like when you have a business and you have a legitimate business, you always have annual goals. You have annual themes, you have annual goals, you have quarterly goals, you break those down into monthly goals, you break those monthly goals down into weekly tasks, and you watch the only way to hit a goal is by setting milestones to get there. And so anybody who's a hater on New Year's resolutions, or anybody who's a hater on you trying to improve your life, is like, that's just not somebody I want to be around, right? If you're like, oh, too cool for self improvement or tracking where you want to be and setting out goals and allowing a yearly calendar cycle to dictate um, that analysis or at least be a trigger for it, I just think that's everybody should do it. It's such a good practice to have a reset. Now we can get into other conversations like maybe the calendar should be more oriented towards the new year being in the change to spring, which I would agree with. I think there's some conversation to be had around that. But I do think put some resolutions together. And I think the idea that, a lot of people are like, oh, I missed it. It's now January 3rd, 4th, and I didn't do it. Like, to me, it can be an ongoing process. You don't have to shove it all into one day, but you should write something down. And I'll give you kind of the way that I do it. The way that I like to go about this and the way that I'm doing it this year is that I'm actually doing and I did this the last couple of years, is I have a theme for the year, whether it's 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, I have a theme, right? In the past, my theme has been stick-to-itiveness. That was a word that I came up with because I found myself to be very excitable and very passionate about things, but it was for a short period of time, and I needed to learn how to find something I'm passionate about and stick with it. And that was actually the same year I started my podcast, which is interesting. But and here we are today. So stick-to-itiveness was my theme one year, right? This year it's like responsibility, self-care, and structure. And so then I take that and I create kind of what do I want to see out of that? But I can always just rely on those 2 to 3 words, 1 word, to allow me to dictate a change in my decision making for the year surrounding those things. And so there's a lot of different things that you can do, but I think the most important one is setting an intention. And I have goals for this podcast. I have goals for my business life, my personal life, my family, my Instagram, my other social media platforms. And I think that's good too. But I think the most important thing is just having 1 to 2 words that you can always fall back on, even if you lose your way with a goal or, which people just have a hard time tracking through, which even businesses have that difficulty. That's why you need to set meetings, whether that's with yourself, your spouse, your significant other, your friend, who's going to be your accountability buddy, whoever that is. I think you need to start to have accountability, whether that's just to a calendar, right? That's what it is for me. I know on the end of the month, the 31st of every month, I look back and see, did I hit my milestones for that month? Did I accomplish the tasks that I needed to hit the goals or milestones that I need to hit the goals that I need to hit the themes and have it be a year that's fruitful for me? And so again, this all just comes back to today we're making some changes, and I realized that the feedback that I was getting was that this wasn't exactly the format that's going to create the type of growth and trajectory and connection that I want with you guys. And so again, I'm excited about the future, and I appreciate you guys being here with me, taking this journey with me. It's going to be constantly experimenting with new guests and new topic titles and formats and different things, but through that, I hope it keeps you engaged and interested, and we'll learn through this together. And so I appreciate you guys. I'm excited about the future. I hope you are too. Set some intentions for the year. Analyze your last year and find your highlight reel. What was it about the last 365 days that you loved about your year? What was it that you learned from your year? What was it that you would have, if you could go back, that you would have improved about yourself or your outcomes? And what is your theme for the year, right? And I can go into a whole thing on goal setting and how to do it, how to write it down, how to put it in front of yourself. And there's a whole way of going about that, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But for this portion, I just wanted to get with you guys, tell you I appreciate you. We're going to be making some cool, fun changes and experiments together. And I hope you like the guests that I bring on. I hope you like the topics that we discuss. And truly, I'll get your feedback on whether or not you're sharing the podcast with other people. And I see that growth. But until that day, and we hit those goals, going to be experimenting, going to be changing things up a little bit and trying new things and hoping to hear what you guys love about it along the way. So with that in mind, go set your intentions for the year, set your goals, set your themes, right? Find an accountability buddy that you can sit down with on a monthly or quarterly basis and go, yo, man, how's your workouts going? How's your diet? How's your business? How's your podcast? How's your alcoholism? Are you lowering your intake of alcohol, right? Whatever that is, there's lots of different ways to improve your life. And I hope you do that for yourself and for your family and for your friends. And if nothing else, do it for somebody else. Tell them, hey, I know you got some goals and I want to help you hit those goals. And I'm going to do that by meeting with you once a month for an hour to talk through where you're at and what we can do to help each other out. All right, that's what I got for you guys. I love you. Happy 2024. I appreciate you and excited, super excited about what's coming in the future for the Adamsk Archive. Thank you guys so much.
Adam's Archive.